The good, the bad.
No one ever raised any concerns about my expenses when I worked for Halifax Bank of Scotland.
And the very ugly. These are the interesting times. Hello everyone, my name's Matt Johnson and welcome to The Interesting Times, a comedy show that looks and laughs at UK politics. You know, sometimes with this show, it's hard to see if someone or something is good or bad. Sometimes it's a good idea to just scratch the surface to get past the headline and see if there's a thought process there. And if so, is that thought process good or bad? And nowhere, and with no one, is that good or bad procedure more apt than with our still new-ish Labour government. So, it has been a little over 8 months since Labour swept the power, and the results have been, in diplomatic language, mixed. There's been good.
Over the course of this Parliament, the government is determined to finally bring the feudal leasehold system to an end. As we work to progress the wider set of reforms necessary to do so, we're also acting to provide leaseholders with relief by implementing those reforms to the leasehold system already in statute.
Not so good.
And I'm extremely sad to say that my party too has been dragged in the wrong direction. Our policy on trans issues is worse now than it was in previous years.
And holy crap, what?
Illegal immigrants filmed as they're being deported. The government hopes images like these will help to convince voters they are being tough on illegal immigration.
Yes, we're slapping people in handcuffs to transport them to the magical land of not our problem anymore. It's the 19th century again, but without the option of colonising Australia. Now, a recent survey done of Gen Zers showed that some 48% of them believe the UK to be racist, which is just absolute nonsense. Gen Zers, I hope you can hear me with your iPods and your grunge music. The UK isn't racist. We just elect racist politicians, that's all. To give you some idea of how racist, try this.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative government established the Ukraine Family Scheme, and in total, over 200,000 Ukrainians, mostly women, children and the elderly, have found sanctuary in the UK from Putin's war. However, a family of 6 from Gaza have applied to live in Britain using this scheme, and a judge has now ruled in their favour. This is not what the scheme was designed to do.
Yeah. Not what the scheme was designed to do, and this bunch of schemers should know better than anyone. Bloody judges applying the law. Come on, the scheme was designed for white people fleeing an invasion, not brown people fleeing an invasion. The Tories knew the problem with this bill of removing human beings by force if necessary and not stopping those who have fled dangerous situations to claim British citizenship from doing so. It's all a little bit too woke. As Chris Philps called it, the Borders Surrender Bill. And all of this, of course, gave absolutely no room for reform to manoeuvre as it shifted ever further so far right it couldn't even see what was going on. Which probably explains why they didn't know what was going on.
No, I'm asking you, how would reform do it? Do they have a plan? You may not know what that plan is, that's fine if you don't. I'm just asking if you do.
No. I'm trying to say that your persistent question to Joe about there being a deterrent, Rwanda wasn't really ever going to work.
So what would be reforms?
Okay,
what would be reforms deterrent then?
What reform need to come up with, and I don't think they've got it yet, is a policy that has the elements of Rwanda that involves a punishment for people who come here illegally.
Punishment? Like breaking down their door in the early hours with armed police and guard dogs and then handcuffing them, shoving them on a plane away from a country where they felt safe and where they've gotten work to a country where they won't. That was blogger and general reform mouthpiece Tim Montgomery. So, Labour are bad, but not as bad as the Tories and Reform. That isn't really much of a positive stance. Then there's the whole Ukraine business, as we watch Trump hand it over to Russia before negotiations have even begun. And Starmer's response?
The position since the outbreak of this conflict has been a united position across the House of supporting Ukraine, and I was able to reiterate my position, which is we must put Ukraine in the strongest possible position. That matters now just as much as it mattered at the beginning of this conflict, the strongest possible position, and I did discuss with him what more we can do, what more our allies can do to put Ukraine in the strongest possible position.
Yeah. Are you feeling in a strong position there, Ukraine? That was our Prime Minister there talking about resolving the biggest war on the continent in 80 years, like he's getting a good deal on a second-hand Renault Clio with 10,000 miles on the clock. Won't anyone please stick up for our European friends? Actually, yes, someone will. Can you guess who it is? I'll give you 3,000 guesses. Nope. 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 Sorry, who? Oh, nope. Nope.
It's Russia that's killing people. If Russia stopped fighting, if Russia wanted to end the war, if Russia stopped fighting, Russia could just stop fighting. There wouldn't be a war. No one would be killed.
And that would be
great.
Hey,
our job done.
Yeah,
but why doesn't the West take that to Russia?
Ultimately, maybe that's what the negotiations are.
Which part of Britain would you give away if we were invaded and you wanted to negotiate peace?
None at all.
Oh, so we wouldn't give away any of Britain. But it's okay to give away a bit of Ukraine.
Julia Hartley-Brewer there, laying into the dick. Or as the Daily Express put it, Thai slap JHB down. Really got a feel for all the staff at the Express if they see that as a win. No wonder they're still supporting Brexit. So, we all know Reform's Deputy Leader Richard Tice will back Russia, except the leader of Reform, Nigel Farage, backing Ukraine to join NATO, something Trump himself isn't backing. I mean, make it make sense. Then there's the economy, which isn't doing great.
Government has made growing the economy one of its key pledges. But today, in a blow to earlier and more optimistic predictions, the Bank of England slashed its growth forecast in half from 1.5 to 0.75%.
Oh wait, it is?
The economy has grown. It's grown. It grew by 0.1%.
And yet it's not.
How the OBR is going to potentially treat what has been 6 months' worth of pretty bad news on the economy since Labour came to power.
Oh, yes, no, actually it is.
Inflation is down. Mortgage rates are coming down. Wages are growing fastest, at their fastest rate in 3 years.
But whether it is or isn't doesn't seem to matter.
What you're judged on as a politician. It's only one of the issues. There's a question about, was there an investigation into expenses or not?
It's now clear that your Chancellor misled everybody about how long she was at the Bank of England.
And finally, last week you said in this conversation, our weekly conversation, that Rachel Reeves wouldn't survive until the next election. We've had now this expenses story.
And no issues were ever raised during my time at Halifax Bank of Scotland.
Really? Taking the piss out of expenses on a job before you're even an MP and over-exaggerating your CV? No, that's not important either. No, this is the important bit.
It's not okay, but actually this is a pretty trivial issue. I know it's going to be kicked around by the media because the media
and it's not the first time that it's had to be amended. That's...
No, well, you know, it's
and
still...
you know, it is the Chancellor. This is like the second most important person in the nation.
Fine. No, I accept all that, but actually it's a distraction from the pretty catastrophic situation in which we find ourselves. We have a Chancellor and indeed a Prime Minister who now seem to have no vision at all except this thing called growth.
Exactly. We are over 8 months into the first Labour government for 14 years. So effectively 14 years for this lot to get some idea of what they stand for. But if you were to ask me, I couldn't realistically tell you what Reeves-conomics even is, apart from this bizarre idea of having a third runway at Heathrow, which most experts will tell you will take a decade to finish. And that will bring growth in what, the next year? Never mind the noise pollution and pollution. How is that going to even be achieved?
I think we can get that done in a decade. And I say that because we're not just announcing that we back it, we are changing the way that our planning system works.
Ah, yes. The first rule of aviation infrastructure is worry about the safety regulations at a later stage. Oh, actually, I'm wrong, because I do know one thing Labour stood for. At least it was supposed to stand for. Strapping migrants to a plane isn't change, going after the elderly and those on benefits and the poorest in society isn't change. And ripping up regulations to destroy the planet isn't change. And wait, what's that? Can we zoom in a bit, please? A little bit closer? Closer? Wait, damn it. They always get you on the small print. And that's it. No time to talk about Kemi Badenoch, who is still doing a sterling job of keeping the Labour Party in power. Here she is forgetting that it was Conservatives that installed the Ukraine scheme which the family from Gaza used to get to safety.
A family of 6 from Gaza have applied to live in Britain using this scheme, and a judge has now ruled in their favour. This is not what the scheme was designed to do. This decision is completely wrong. It cannot be allowed to stand. Is the government planning to appeal on any points of law? And if so, which ones?
The decision in question was taken under the last government.
And here she is, forgetting that headlines from the Daily Mail should sometimes, on occasion, be taken with just a little pinch of salt. Just a smidgen, mind.
The government is now recruiting a new Chief Inspector of Borders who lives in Finland and wants to work from home. This is not serious. Why should the British public put up with this?
And having Keir Starmer remind her.
The individual in question was appointed in 2019 by the last government to a senior position. He then worked for 5 years from Finland. We've changed that and he's now going to be working from the United Kingdom full-time.
As she'd forgotten that, yes, it was her party again. In fact, so bad is Badenoch.
And also it's not Badenoch, it's Badenoch.
Yeah, Badenoch.
Badenoch.
Fair enough. So, Bad Enoch's latest gaffe, which she never makes, is to try to get Angela Rayner to stop the postponement, not cancellation, of some local elections in May because of restructuring of some district council merging with local councils to create what will be known as unitary authorities. Well, Kemi's party started that. Yes, she forgot. But she also seems to have forgotten how badly the Tories are doing in the polls. If these elections go ahead, the Conservatives are going to lose so many seats, as the British public have had enough of the Tories. And finally, while all the world's eyes were on Munich the last week, as the Americans came to town to teach the Europeans about democracy, ex-PM and fluffy-headed Etonian toilet seat, Boris Johnson got interviewed by GB News, I'm guessing in a cupboard.
Look at the sheer quantity of American weaponry, kit that's gone to Ukraine. $65 billion worth at least. Compare it to what has come from the whole of the rest of NATO, the whole of Europe, and it dwarfs it, right?
Okay, steady on with the arm there, bozo. That has to be the most empty bookshelf I think I've ever seen. It's like a library for the lazy.
And so what Trump is trying to say to the Europeans, to us Brits, to everyone, is man up and step up, or person up.
Oh, you think now's the time to have some fun with pronouns?
The American people elected him on a mandate.
Person date.
To get value. It's what the Brits need to do. And frankly, you mentioned Keir Starmer, you mentioned what we should be doing now is working with our European friends.
Our European friends? Really? I mean, you threatened to invade Holland over vaccines. You nearly restarted a salmon war with the French. You didn't attend a single EU meeting while you were Prime Minister. You spent your time as a journalist at the Telegraph making up stories about the EU, which very much set the tone for you spearheading the Leave EU campaign that made a split from Europe, damaging both of us to further your political career. With friends like you, who needs Putin?
Which is to fortify Ukraine. If we can't get them immediately into NATO, what we need to do now is strengthen them with NATO-grade weaponry, intelligence, logistics, drones, tanks, guns, shells, everything that they could conceivably need, so that they're basically in future totally indigestible to Putin. A steel-quilled porcupine.
Totally ingestible porcupine. Spoken like the prick you are. But Boris, if we want to make Ukraine unappealing to Putin, surely all we need to do is get Ukraine to join the EU and then get them to leave. Hey, it worked for us. Speaking of which, play the intro. Yes, the end of the show Brexit type of slot. Well, could say we've already done it, or at least are being pushed into doing so by an aggressive Russian and a weak American. So, an EU army is definitely going to be talked about. And something else that may be talked about is a petition to get the UK to rejoin the EU as a full member as soon as possible. And yes, I did sign it. At least once. Okay, no I didn't. I wasn't allowed. So will this go anywhere? Maybe. Maybe not. But if you can get the MPs to talk about Brexit, that's the start. And they might even catch up to the rest of the country in seeking a rejoin rather than a reset. And if this guy does it, then after 5 years in office, we'll be able to talk about Labour and what they stood for. Thank you all so much for watching. And if you have enjoyed this video, then feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment, and I'll see you all next week. Take care.